we are living in a very information age, I think, and everything is available, everything is online, everything is there. And this information age doesn't make things easier at some point, or not in certain extent, because then there is a dearth of information, or misinformation, or like the other day in the conference, I heard the new term, which was epistemic instability, meaning there's full bunch of information out there, but we don't have a knowledge of things going on. If we bring this into the topic that we are talking now, the fast is inherent in many cultures or faith, or call it religions, or even foreign non-religious identities. It's like a diet, or different sort of different diets, and done with different purposes. And in a Finnish context, we have this lots of diverse people with very diverse backgrounds, but not necessarily we know what we practice or what they do practice. In Sky, Finnish Intercultural Community, we thought that it might be interesting actually to know, for example, does Christians fast, or does Bahais fast, or does Hindus fast? And then we thought we can Google it, but Google sometimes is a problematic, because you don't know which is an authentic information, which is a speculation, which is just opinion, or which is a traditional intellectual historical mainstream knowledge that you can access. So then this idea born that let us listen, let us hear from people who do really practice, and who do really can represent and feed us with authentic information. And I think might be very useful beyond us, because I have heard that in schools they ask pupils to go and search for fast in different cultures or in different religions. So people are searching now on internet in Finland, or in different contexts. This might be very useful. But I myself very excited to meet you. I see Gopal first on the line. That's why I'm like referring to Gopal now. And then I see Christina and Suat and Heidi, Annie. And once more, welcome. And it's my pleasure to see you, and all my colleagues are with applause, happily looking forward for this panel. Okay, as I would like to remind that the format, after this short general introduction, we will have 3 rounds. In first round, I will ask one by one the panelists in 7 minutes to describe the fasting from more theoretical or scriptural perspective, one by one. And then in the second round, we have a time of 3 minutes to reflect on the practice in everyday life. And then in the third round, we can get questions, or then we can discuss with the information that we will have at the end of it. So, so far, so good. Yeah, and let me introduce, would you like me to introduce panelists, or better you introduce yourself, or what's preferable for the panelists? Otherwise, I have the information, of course. I was very excited to read it. Okay, then I can start. On my document, I have Heidi Rautionma, who was also taking part in our previous event, which was during the first COVID breakout, and we prayed for Finland and for humanity. Represented different, they will represent different religions, and Heidi was there as well. She is an educator journalist and a Lutheran pastor. Her bio is so long, but I will try to shorten it. She gives training on interfaith issues and to teachers, people with religious communities, and youth. And she is in this area with more than 20 years of experience. And she has been representative in international events, occasions, in high-level forums. And currently, she is also a fellow of KAISIT and board member of European Network on Religion and Belief. And she is currently writing her doctoral dissertation and on a topic of inter-world with education, and she wants to become, and she's studying to become, a health education teacher and a vocational guidance counselor of universities of applied sciences and colleges. So welcome, Heidi.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the organizers for organizing such a great panel with a great topic, and I want to wish all my Muslim friends a very good Ramadan, blessed Ramadan. So you want me to now tell about the past traditions in Christianity?
Now I will introduce all panelists, and then I will come back to you now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your good wish. Indeed, we are now in the month of Ramadan. It's practically fasting right now, so it's good to having this event in this time. We have Suat Onniselka, and she's currently a deputy principal in Puistopol Comprehensive School in Helsinki, and she has a teacher experience in portfolio learning evaluation and other systems. And she has been working as a curriculum developer at both national and local levels, and specializing on Islamic education. She has currently written current national curriculum text in basic education from 2014, and many others in 2016 and 21. And also to highlight, she has been coordinating Islamic school book series in basic education for grade 1 and 9 with Finnish National Board of Education, which are published in Finnish. Some of them are published in Swedish and even in Tatar language. It was very interesting. Yeah, and welcome, Suat. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting here, and I'm really looking forward this afternoon to talk about fast together.
Thank you. And we have Christina Schmidt-Pentila. I hope I pronounced it correct. She is she's born in Sweden to Finnish German Bahai family, and studied at the University of Helsinki. For some reason, I wanted to say Jyväskylä, but not. And she has been also representing Bahai External Relations Office, or working there as an intern. And she has been in this UN Human Rights Council Geneva office assisting, and currently she works in Big Four accountancy firm as a tax professional. And I welcome you, Christina, sincerely.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting us, Baha'is, as well, to the discussion.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we have Ani Sherab. She is a Tibetan Buddhist nun. If I translated correctly, please correct me if I'm mistaken. And she studied in 4 years with, I think, professional preachers, and for more than 9 years, and she's now teaching Tibetan Buddhism, as far as I remember, in Finland. And And what else? Anna showed up teaches Buddhism in the Helsinki metropolitan area, yeah, and leads Kagyu Semia Dzong, Finland. She is the second translator or second author, author of How to Tame a Tiger. And welcome, Annie. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Ilko. And yes, that is Taming the Tiger, kuinka tiikeri kesytetään. And I'm looking forward to this panel very much. Thank you. I'm honored to be part of it.
Thank you very much. And then last but not least, we have Gopal Krishnadas, who have been living in International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Helsinki, and he received first and second initiations as a priestly order, and the second one was in 2016 in the holy place of Vrindavan in India, the birthplace of Krishna, along with holy thread Gayatri Mantra. And he himself observes also a strict fasting called Ekadasi, and other regulated fasts, and other regulations of the regulations of the monastery life. And I'll be very super excited to hear from you. Welcome, Gopal. And I hope Gopal can hear me. Now we can come back to Heidi. Now you have 7 minutes to give us a general or brief introduction to fasting in Christianity, or specifically in Evangelical Lutheranism. Please.
Thank you very much. First of all, fasting is found throughout the Old and New Testament of the Bible over 50 times. In Christianity, there are different types of fasting, and fasting that takes place different time of the year. For example, at the Greek Orthodox Church, there are 4 major fasting periods. And what's more, every Wednesday and Friday throughout the year are fast days. But I will now focus on the Great Fast, or the Great Lent, that is the most important fasting season in the church year, which prepares Christians for Easter, the holiest day of the year that marks the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The Lent is the 40-day long period marked by solemnity and contemplation. For example, Catholic Church sees Lent for engaging in spiritual exercises, penitence, pilgrimages, fasting, almsgiving, charity, and missionary work. It is intended to be a workshop kind where character can spiritually be uplifted and strengthened, where life is dedicated to the principles and ideals of the gospel, where fasting and prayer culminate in deep conviction of life, where apathy and disinterest turn into great activities of faith, and also when people are really, really concentrating how to be a Christian in real life. At least it is wished to do so. I come from the Lutheran tradition. The Lutheran Church split from the Catholic Church in the 16th century, preaching the primacy of the Bible and salvation by faith alone. Lent is in the liturgy of both of those churches. For example, the word Alleluia, which is a joyful exclamation, is taken out of the church liturgy of both churches during this period, but it returns full voice in the glorious celebration of Easter morning. I will talk a lot about the liturgy because that is how it is seen mostly at the Lutheran Church, this Lent. The main differences between those two churches is the authority that Lent carries. Lutherans may voluntarily choose to fast during Lent whereas Catholics are mostly expected to do so. I can later explain if interested to know what are the food that are not allowed to eat if you are, for example, a Catholic or Orthodox. The Book of Concord contains the Lutheran confessions, which are the doctrinal statements of the Lutheran Church. And it's interesting, the word Lent is only mentioned one time in this book, and it emphasizes giving sermons year-round instead of just during Lent. In the Lutheran faith, much emphasis is given to scripture and liturgy during the Lenten season. Acts of grace, such as helping the elderly, are also encouraged. In some regions in the world, Lent is preceded by unspiritual festivals, such as the popular Carnival in Brazil, that are held on the day before the Ash Wednesday, just before the Lent. And in Finland, we have a celebration called laskiainen, which includes some ecclesiastic traditions from Catholic history, just before Ash Wednesday when Lent starts. And laskiainen is the festival that we still celebrate, even though we are a Lutheran, we have been kind of like a Lutheran country for many years, but things are changing. When discussing Lenten liturgical practices of Lutherans, the first visual component is that of the color purple that adorns the Lord's house in various manners throughout the season of Lent. This deep hue has come to represent solemnity, penitence, and prayer as God's people meditate on the agony His Son willingly endured. And twice in the Lenten season, on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, the Lord's house may be adorned with the color black, which represents the absence of light and the curse of sin and darkness, which fell over creation that only the death of the perfect Son of God could abolish. The second visual component is that on the sign of the cross applied upon the repentant Christian's forehead during the imposition of ashes on Ash Wednesday. And this is the practice that has tended to take place more and more also at the Lutheran Church in Finland. This symbolic rite is the reminder of the sign of the cross that was placed on us in our baptism. Our mortality as well, remember you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And the filth of our sin that has been washed clean by the blood of Jesus Christ. A historic service, the Great Vigil of Easter, on the eve of Easter Sunday had fallen out of common practice, yet it recently experiencing a resurgence. Some years there have been a new twist on Lent called eco-fasting, and that fits in quite naturally with the Lent tradition of the Church, also at the Lutheran Church. Eco-fasting can be observed in many ways. For example, cutting down on driving, giving up meat, spending less time in the shower, and avoiding unnecessary purchases and using products and services that have a lower impact on the environment. Those that practice might have a wish in general that in this way, little by little, the behavior becomes more environmentally friendly. And some nowadays seems to stay away from social media for this period of Lent in order to be more at present this real life. And then just few words, if I have time, I would say, what are the origin and history of fasting in the Church? There's an ancient practice of fasting in sorrow and repentance of sins found in the Old Testament. Fasting also accompanied reverent prayer to God. In the early Church, we find that the apostles were familiar with fasting and did so prior to making important decisions to gain divine assistance. The practice of fasting during Lent finds its genesis in Lord's journey into the desert, where he fasted and prayed for 40 days and nights in preparation to begin his public ministry. The 40 days of Lent are in imitation of Christ's time in the desert. And during Lent, the Christians walk into the desert with Christ and fast so as to have the strength to avoid temptation with the help of God's grace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heidi. It was very much compact in providing the general idea. And if I may, we can perhaps switch to, on my screen, I see Christina Schmidt-Pentila, please.
Of course. So as mentioned, I'm Christina. I'm here to represent the Bahai faith. And I'm very, very happy and honored to have been invited. As not many of you maybe have such a profound knowledge of the Bahai faith, I just want to take 1 minute to very quickly look at some of the principles that might be relevant to our discussion, and then also go to more specifics of the fast. I have 2 slides which I'm sharing, but you can of course use your Zoom window to decide what you want to actually see. So the Bahai faith is, now I think everyone can see. The Bahai faith is based on the idea of unity of God and the unity of religion, so that all religions come from the same God and are just revealed to the world in different times and different places, which relates to some of the society-related differences in teachings. The prophet founder of the Bahai faith, Baha'u'llah, has issued some guidance for this time, as Baha'is believe, of which I just want to mention a few, which are importance of education, so that we can take, so that every person can take responsibility of their own spiritual growth, the equality of men and women, the eradication of the extremes of wealth and poverty, which plays into fasting in the way that we are encouraged to also kind of practice compassion during the fast for those less fortunate than us. And also the belief that science and religion are parts of the same whole, and that they both are important to understanding the world. Science explaining the physical reality of the world and of the body and of the nature, and religion helping us understand the spiritual needs of humans and mankind as a whole. So they should be looked at together. From Baha'is don't have clergy, which is why I am here just as an individual Baha'i representing us. So we, as mentioned, we are responsible ourselves for our individual growth and spiritual well-being, and also our own interpretation of the religious text. So I do my best to render my understanding of our teachings, but it is basically for everyone to look at them themselves. I have no authority to explain them more than anyone else. I mentioned here these few society-related teachings, but when we look at the spiritual teachings, we believe that the spiritual reality of humanity has not significantly changed over the course of time. And that, sorry, now I can hear some background noise there.
Now, yeah, somebody was talking out there.
Thank you. So the twin pillars of spiritual tools to help us with our growth are fasting and prayer. And Baha'is have the option to fast at any time during the year, but we also have dedicated time for fasting. If we choose to fast at any time during the year, it should be, or we are, it is brought to our attention that it is preferable in the sight of God to give pledges and vows, to direct them in a way that would be beneficial to all mankind, whereas then kind of individual development during the fast is maybe something that we focus on during the actual fasting time. Our fast is situated, the obligatory fast time is situated just leading up to our New Year's celebration at the spring equinox. So it's every year at the same time, similar to Christians, more or less, the same time. So it's always in March. And it is also, just as a carnival, it is preceded by a few days called Ayamiha, which are so-called intercalendar days, which are days of celebration and doing good deeds and giving presents and just general joyfulness. And then these ease into the time of fasting. Fasting itself is very much a spiritual exercise. And now I hope that I can get the next slide to show exactly here. The Bahai writings state that the period of fasting leading up to New Year is essentially a period of meditation and prayer, of spiritual recuperation, during which we believers must strive to make the necessary readjustments to our inner life and refresh and reinvigorate the inner forces latent in our souls. Its significance and purpose are therefore fundamentally spiritual in character. So very many of us may take it as it's the last kind of month in the Bahai calendar to reflect on the previous year and to look at what we may want to do differently, to really kind of take a time out and then focus our energies on the future year. It is symbolic and it's kind of there to remind us on the fact that we are spiritual beings, and while there's a physical component to which we kind of look at in the next round of discussion, really it is there to unlock the potentialities within ourselves and to help us raise ourselves as human beings to a higher spiritual level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're perfectly on time. If you mind, stop sharing the presentation. Meanwhile, I will invite Suat Oniselka to present, please.
Thank you. So now we are spending the most, I think for most Muslims, this is like the most important time of year, even though we have other holy months also in Islam. So we are now having Ramadan, which is like the 9th month in Islamic calendar. As Muslims, we follow lunar calendar. It means that the year is only, or every year gets 10 to 11 days earlier. And this is something what's for Finnish people, it's very difficult to understand as why our celebration, it's always in the different time. So the in Islamic calendar, the month, it's always 29 or 30 days. And the start of Ramadan, it's seen when the first moon crescent of after the new moon it's seen, or the 30 days are full. So that's why we are a bit difficult, especially when we start or we end the Ramadan, because we don't know much earlier when the fasting or the end of the Ramadan it's starting. So the fast, it's like we always start before the morning prayer, the Fajr, before the dawn, actually in English. And the fast ends at the Maghrib, the sunset. And during that time, we don't eat, we don't drink water, and also we don't have a sexual relationship, and we try to avoid bad behavior in general. Good behavior should be maintained. When after the Maghrib starts the time when we actually do eat, so it's not that much about suffering. I'm at the work. I work at school, so a lot of teachers, they ask about that. I think it's in the other round. I can explain more in details, but a lot of Muslims don't lose actually weight during the Ramadan. It's quite much about festival of food during the nighttime. But first we should look like in the details how it's found in the scriptures. So we always start the fasting with intention niyyah. And in Suratul Baqarah, the second surah in Quran, there in a couple of verses, it's described how we should fast. And fasting, it's considered during the Ramadan obligatory for everyone who is healthy. And there's also other regulations on that, but we go that for later on. And in Islam, it's also mentioned that there were nations before Muslims who were also demanded to keep their fast. And the fast, it's always certain numbers. And those, for example, who are sick or traveling, they are not obligated to fast. If you're traveling, you can later on make up those days. And so it's the fasting, it's seen especially, it's not only like you are not eating or drinking, it's the spiritual journey. During the Ramadan, actually, people don't get tired that much about not eating and drinking. It's about after the Maghrib, we have special prayers, Tarawih prayers. A lot of people, they try to read the whole Quran during the Ramadan. And especially the last 10 days of Ramadan are very important for us. It's when we are looking for night of power. And that's why a lot of people, they stay awake and they try to pray as much as possible during the night. So when you see your colleague at work and he or she is tired, it's not necessarily because of lack of the food, it's because we wake up during the nights. And especially like for me, I always wake up early and go to my work. So you can understand that at 8 o'clock in the office, I'm not feeling the most fresh. So especially at the end of the Ramadan, you see the results of fasting. We see that fasting, it's giving us guidance, and it's meant as like Ramadan, the Quran, it's meant for the guidance for whole mankind, not only for Muslims, but for Muslims it's obligatory to fast. It's not meant for hardship. God wants us to make things easy. We need to, of course, to do some work for our faith, but it's not like it's impossible a mission for us. I think for Ramadan, it's for a lot of Muslims, it's time to stop because and to think like which things are important in our lives, especially when you don't spend so much time on cooking. I hope so, that you're not all the time in the kitchen. So you have also time to read and to discuss and to have more times for prayer and to stop and think like, is this really the life what I want to have? The rules for fasting, it's obligatory for those who are Muslims, those people who are accountable. So in Islam, we normally talk about we mean the people who are past of the age of puberty. It's obligatory for those who are able to fast. So if you are having diabetes or other sickness, you are not obligated to do that. If you are settled, it means that you are not traveling. If you're traveling, if you can do that, but it's not obligatory. That time you make up the days later. And especially if you are really sick or you have extreme pain in injury, then you don't need to fast. Also, those women who are breastfeeding or pregnant, they can make the days later on. We have also other days in Islam when we actually do fast, and we have this kind of times when you can do it. For example, any 6 days in a month of Shawwal. It's also sunnah to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. Then there are this kind of white days like the 13th, 14th and 50th day of each lunar month, day of Arafah. And as often as possible in the months of Rajab and Shaban before the Ramadan. And those people, when it's time of Hajj, the first 9 days you can fast, but don't fast on the day of Eid. I think I was talking a little bit over time, but I'm waiting for the next.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll ask now Ani Sherab to come on.
Okay. Right. So this is about the Buddhist fast. And Buddhists are followers of Gautama Buddha, who lived 2,500 years ago in India. His teachings are very vast and contain many methods. And individual people, as they are different, they need a variety of ways to proceed on the spiritual path. Buddha Sakyamuni himself, he followed the Hindu tradition in his youth, and he took up an extremely strict fast. That was the way of the ascetics of his time. Siddhartha Gautama was searching liberation from suffering of sickness, old age, death, and rebirth, and he tried many methods. However, only after he stopped fasting did he attain the Great Awakening. He understood that desire was keeping sentient beings in the realms of suffering, samsaric suffering, but he had thought incorrectly that if he stopped eating, he could end desire. Over time, he got extremely thin and no longer had the strength to meditate. Finally, he understood that he would die out of hunger if he continued fasting. And it started to seem to him that desire does not end by force. It's only suppressed, and it appears again when allowed by circumstances. At that point, when he was fainting out of hunger, he was offered a meal of rice porridge cooked in milk. Eating it, he regained his strength and renewed his meditation, and then reached enlightenment. So by quitting fasting and eating in moderation, he came up with one of the central tenets of Buddhist practice, which is moderation, the middle way. Overeating and undereating both defeat the purpose of food, which is to nourish the body and to keep us healthy so that we can be of benefit to the world. However, later the Buddha and his students did practice self-discipline regarding food intake as one of the methods in taming the mind. The Buddha advised his monks and nuns to not go to alms rounds many times a day and to not take solid food after noon. It is said that this moderate food intake helps with generating a calm and clear mind. Lay people following the Buddha, those who observed the 8 precepts, On new and full moon days, they also abstained from taking any solid food after noon on those special days, at least twice a month. Within the large global Buddhist family today, there are many different practices concerning fasting. For example, during my own group retreats, we were eating just vegetarian breakfast and lunch before noon, and after lunch we could drink but not eat solid food. But actual fasting is an additional method that one can take up with supervision for a time. Because it is a difficult practice, it needs guidance. In the Kagyu lineage that I follow, there is Nyungne fasting practice, which I have done before going into long retreats. Nyungne involves meditating on love and compassion for all beings while eating only every second day. During the fast, speech is used for reciting sacred texts only, not for ordinary conversation. There is a legend about Nyungne fasting. Nyungne was practiced in ancient times by an Afghan princess who took monastic vows and became a nun called Gelong Palma. As her negative karma from past lives ripened, she contracted leprosy. The illness got awfully bad and she had to live in isolation from everybody else. As she prayed, Bodhisattva Shenresik appeared. Shenresik is a Buddhist archetype of compassion, an emanation of Buddha. Shenresik is also known as Avalokiteshvara. The name means one who looks at beings with compassion. In a Buddhist story, Shenresik vows never to rest until he has helped to free all sentient beings from suffering. But despite his best efforts, his task was overwhelming, and eventually his body was shattered into pieces. With help of the Buddha, he then got 11 heads and 1,000 arms out of those pieces, and now he can help others even more effectively. That's the legend. Tibetan Buddhism relates Shenresik to the 6-syllable mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, and when this mantra is spoken aloud or in silence, it invokes his benevolent power and intervention. Shenresik is considered to be the patron saint of Tibet, and the Dalai Lama is said to be an incarnation of him. Whenever we are compassionate and loving towards others, be they human or animal, we experience a taste of a connection with Shenresik. So Shenresik came to help the sick nun Gelong Palma and instructed her in doing a special fast. She was thus allowed to eat and drink a little every second day. Rest of the time, she did not eat or drink anything, but recited prayers and the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. She developed tremendous loving kindness and her body began to heal. Even wild animals protected her. Eventually, she became one of the 84 Indian Mahasiddhas who performed miracles, thus helping people to have faith in the Buddha's teachings. There are also stories of other sages, such as Tibetan yogi Milarepa, who practiced austerities. He succeeded in attaining amazing heights of spirituality, and he did not need much mundane food. Such religious people have developed their mental power through restraining from sensual indulgence, and eventually they reach equanimity, becoming free from attachment and aversion. So that is what I'm going to say at that point.
Very much, Ani. I want to add the venerable before Ani. I hope that it would become more beautiful sounding. Thank you very much. Now let's turn our attention to Krishna Gopal Das. Floor is yours.
I'm very grateful to be able to participate in this wonderful event. And generally, by observing fast strictly according to scriptures, how it recommends for person get benefit on physical, on metaphysical and spiritual levels. And first of all, I want to speak a few words about austerity, where it originates. Basically, it means we're giving up something to get something else, something better. So this fasting, one of the quickest way of achieving results that people derive. Basically, we are following Bhakti Yoga Krishna consciousness, which is a very orthodox tradition of Hinduism, also like around 5,000 years old. And this tradition is basically two parts. There's Nivritti Marga and Pravritti Marga. Means one path of enjoyment and another path of renunciation. So as we speak about fasting, I will speak more about this Nivritti Marga, also touching of Pravritti, means of how people fast if they follow the path of enjoyment and the path of austerity. So in the beginning of the universe, when creation was starting, Lord Brahma, he was described how he was bewildered about the creation of the universe and how it should be started. So he was inquiring and praying to the Supreme, and he heard two syllables, means ta pa, which means from Sanskrit language, austerity, perform austerity. And by performing austerity, we can please the Supreme, we can please God, but it's not the main process of self-realization, but it's helping person to concentrate better his mind and control his senses, and ultimately to understand the purpose of what he's doing. To understand the process of fasting, we should look at the concept of karma. And basically, everybody knows what karma is. It's our fate. But if you produce violence, you get violence. If you produce goodness, you get goodness, basically. So most of the karma, basically, we get day by day life from our food. And basically in Krishna consciousness, and in Hinduism, it's strict vegetarian diet. And especially in Krishna consciousness, we abstain from, it's our regulative principle to not at any time eat any meat products or fish or egg. And this is like basic of our non-violence principles. And on top of that, every 14 days approximately, because we follow lunar calendar, there's 11 days of vaccine and rising moon, which is called Ekadarsi, and it's a strict fast, which is according which path you are following. If you're on a path of Pravritti, means path of enjoyment, means not so much austerity, then its fast is much lighter. It's only abstaining from grains, eating lightly once a day. And if you're following the more strict path, it's fast from food, from water, and from sleep. Also in Krishna consciousness, there's many holy months, but especially months of Kartik. It's usually, according to lunar calendar, October, November each year. And it's a whole month is dedicated for different spiritual practices, and people take vows to also vows of fasting. But its main purpose, what we try to do in Krishna consciousness, we should when we do some austerity as fasting, for example, we always remind ourselves why we are doing what we are doing. And it's in simple terms, it's about Sambandha, Vidya, Prayojana. It's 3 words, means first is our relationship as a soul to this matter and the God. It's understanding who we are first before we start anything. Second, it's Prayojana, means understanding the goal, what do you want to achieve by your endeavor now, and what is the process of that. So fasting could be in different modes of nature. It could be in ignorance, means we concoct our fasting, and it could be very dangerous, means we made up some process of austerity, which is not recommended by scriptures. So result will not be so wonderful, we can say. There's fasting mode of passion, means we are doing for selfish motives, like politicians may fast, that we can see it in the history of India as well, recent history. It was political fasting. One of the leaders was doing that. But fasting mode of goodness means we are doing for the pleasure of the Lord. So just to summarize, this fasting is recommended in our tradition to people to make a faster advancement in spiritual life, but it's not necessary. As such, main purpose is to follow day by day regulated life and live in peace and happiness non-violently in this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gopal. Now we're going into very day-by-day experience of the fast from perhaps from your personal experience. And I'm here. Welcome, Christina. Would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. Baha'i faith is, our fast is a bit similar to Ramadan, except it's always at the same time of the year in March, and it lasts for 19 days. So during those 19 days, we abstain from food and drink from sunrise to sunset, which is how we try to help ourselves remember the spiritual practices. This basically also means we rise earlier before sunrise, or depending on your regular schedule, I kind of tend to rise early anyway. But then we say morning prayers, and we then also have the time during kind of lunchtime to meditate or say prayers as well. The Baha'i fast is only allowed for kind of adults who are healthy and have no other restrictions on why they should not fast. So because it is quite stringent, as you know from experience, at least those who do Ramadan as well. But we, instead of kind of making up for lost days, we have specific verses or prayers which we say if we kind of have to exempt ourselves from fasting due to some reasons, such as say pregnancy or travel or illness. So we kind of then just replace the material aspects of the fast with the spiritual aspects. One important part for me personally during fasting is also the kind of community aspect of it. Well, obviously before COVID, but we would, if there are Baha'is living close by, it is typical to maybe gather together and have breakfast together and say prayers in the morning, or also very often we kind of invite friends over at night and kind of prepare a meal together or eat together and pray together. So this is personally has been very important part for me to kind of help with this. A practical issue is also, which reminds you throughout the day, is you have to really kind of focus your energy during the day and plan what you do when, especially if you have a job where you have to kind of create a lot of argumentation and that kind of thing. So you have to be very careful throughout the whole fast of how you structure your day so that you get everything done. Remain happy and share your light with everyone, and don't get hangry, so to speak, during the day. So that is one of the biggest challenges for me, to how to structure the day so to stay positive and effective. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Would Heidi like to continue with the practical aspect of the fasting? And it would be good if you also add up what are not allowed to eat.
Okay. Yes, I would do that gladly. Because personally, since I don't have a special schedule for a fast day, they are all unique. I will reflect first more what the fasting and fast means to me, and tell a few actions taking place while fasting. So while fasting, I want to pay closer attention to reading Bible and increase my private prayer. Throughout the New Testament, fasting and prayer are often mentioned together. And in Matthew, we can learn that we aren't to look somber while fasting, so that it's not obvious to others when we are fasting. In the Old Testament, fasting was often a way of expressing grief or a means of humbling one's self before the Lord. So when there is sorrow, I easily fast naturally, because it's also too much to do with praying. I personally believe that the body and soul are inseparable. Therefore, whatever has to do with the body also has to do with the soul. And in the 4th century, one of the best known early church fathers, St. John Chrysostomos, wrote a homily on fasting that also mentions its medicinal benefits. He declared that fasting is called the mother of bodily health. And I really believe in that. Some years back, I was a vegetarian 20 years, and I have been back to this diet again for a couple of years for mainly ethical reasons, but also for healthy reasons. And now I'm trying to concentrate anyways, ethical prepared food in general, and pure and healthy food that can even heal. And during my life, I have personally needed to keep some short period of excesses, a time of spiritual self-discipline. And sometimes that means that I, for example, feel a need to sleep on the floor, or I don't go for shopping for many days and only try to use those ingredients I have at home. And these practices I need to have once in a while, but for a short period. For me, the purpose of fasting is also to learn discipline, to gain control of those things that are indeed within our control, but that we so often allow to control us. The deep intent of a believer during Great Lent, I want to go back to this Great Lent because this is the most important fasting time, is actually said in the words of Saint Paul. And this is actually something that I try to remember during my fast. Forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. And then now I will say some of those instructions if you are Catholic or if you are Orthodox. There are many kind of instructions related to the fast, and according to the Pope Paul VI, there is Apostolic Constitution Paenitemi, and it says that the law of fasting allows only one full meal a day, but does not prohibit taking some food in the morning and evening. And the point is only one full meal is allowed, and one can take some food 2 other times on that day. And this is for the Catholics. And liquids such as juice, coffee, tea, or milk do not technically violate the fast, although refraining from ingesting any animal product such as milk is virtuous. And those Latin Rite Catholics that are excused from fast and and abstinence outside the age limit include the physically or mentally ill, including individuals suffering from chronic illness, such as diabetics. Also excluded are pregnant or nursing women. And in all cases, common sense should prevail, and ill persons should not further jeopardize their health by fasting. This is according to the Catholic Catechism. And today, many Catholics fast and abstain before Easter only on Ash Wednesday and Fridays, and abstain from flesh meat on other Fridays or Lent, which is the minimum required by the precepts of the Church. And it should be noted anyway concerning the tradition of Latin Rite Catholics that all Fridays remain a day of penance, on that day Christ's saving death is remembered. And there's also very interesting information if you want to know that there is also a certain time according to the Catholic tradition, but it is not used that often, that when you should be without food. And it is referring the time when and the hour that Christ gave up his spirit on the cross. And it was the 9th hour or 3 o'clock p.m. So till that time, you are not supposed to eat. And in Orthodox tradition, and there is more kind of ingredients that you are not allowed to have during your fast. There are, for example, food, the meat, and also the eggs and milk productions that are not allowed to have during the fast days.
All right. Thank you very much. I think this even at 3 p.m. today was also meaningful then, I think.
Yes.
And now, please, Swat, we can hear some practical practices basically about fast.
Thank you. We start before the fast. We start in the before the dawn. We have sahur. We eat a little bit. We see that there's a blessing on that. And when we break the fast after the Maghrib, it's iftar. It should be like you eat in moderate amounts. But let's say that if we look the Islamic culture, it has changed a lot. When people get better income, it seems that we are also spending more money on food during the Ramadan. And what I have been talking among Muslim youth, it's like actually we are creating new Islamic culture in especially Muslims in West. It means that for example, for my children, we belong to the minority. So we always use decorations during the Ramadan in order to get the Ramadan feeling. We clean the house before the Ramadan because during the Ramadan we are so tired. There's not much extra energy on the household work. But also one thing, it's like even though Ramadan is about abstaining on consuming too much, it seems that when we have more income, we also spend money on food and we use too much energy on that. It's something what we should consider. It's very understandable that the people before us, when the life standard was lower, it was important to get the calories from the food. And a lot of people, they have this kind of Ramadan feeling that during the Ramadan you should eat food which is quite oily and we don't understand that nowadays we do get enough calories from our food, so we should look at the amounts what we are eating. Other thing, it's also, I think, at the end of the Ramadan, we are taking a lot of things from like Finnish culture or the, let's say, Western culture. For example, for us, we always have celebrated Eid, that we give presents for our children. I also give presents for my co-workers. And this is something what comes certainly from the Christmas time, that we don't want that our children feel neglected, that they don't get certain kind of things what the children are expecting to have in this culture. What comes to the spiritual side of Ramadan, it's also, I think, evangelical Lutheran theology, it's affecting us. I have noticed that at schools, some teachers are saying that it's important to abstain from bad actions and to concentrate, like you are, for example, without not like be using so much time on the social media and so on. And I feel this is like on theological side very interesting, as of course we recognize these things in Islamic tradition as well, but I see that when we belong to the minority, the majority way of thinking is also affecting a lot on our traditions. It's something what we should reflect sometimes and think that, is it really something what we want to keep, or is it other things what we want to highlight when we are transforming our traditions, like how to feast the Ramadan time. I think that was the most important things what I wanted to say with this in 3 minutes.
Right, thank you very much. Now, Annie, please.
Right. I was listening the other presentation with interest, and I feel some similarities, like when Heidi was saying about the fast happening because of the personal need. So that is what happens in my life a lot when I am in kind of retreat circumstances while I am working in the world. So my experience from the real retreat, which lasted many years, I kind of take some of that and then keep the peace part of it, and don't involve in so many things in the world, and just when I have to, then I engage in there. So that is a way of fasting of the worldly turmoil. So it's not only about food, it's about many things. And then if one goes into a state of meditation, that is, there is some background noise again, but if one goes into this kind of state of meditation, then one doesn't need so much food as normally. So that is when it happens naturally, the fast. The new practice that I have done also, we have this kind of book that you can get from Amazon, for example. It's called Rest for the Fortunate by Bardo Tulku Rinpoche. And in there is the picture of the 1,000-armed Shenrezik. So you can see maybe a little bit of that. And it's a visualization. There are pictures and statues of this deity. And when we do it, it contains a long mantra of the 1,000-armed Shenrezik and a short mantra, which is Om Mani Padme Hum. And that reminds the practitioner of something called Buddha nature in all beings. And it is called Buddha nature, but it can be called other things in other religions. It is kind of a seed of pure love, which cannot be destroyed. And the Buddhists believe that it is in everywhere and in every being who has mind. So this kind of deep meaning of the fasting practice is quite important when doing something physical like that. And in my monastery, when we do this nyune, people are offered meager porridge in the morning of the first day and a small plate of food for lunch. And the second day, there is no use of speech except for reciting the ritual texts and no eating or drinking. So this is considered one pair of, and it's common to do 7 pairs or maybe even 108 pairs. So like 216 days. And there are variations of this practice. It can be done with less or more strict discipline. For example, 1-day practice or 3-day practice when one would eat only every 3rd day. And it is believed that this fasting practice is purifying one's negative past actions and habitual tendencies. And while doing it, one observes the 8 precepts. And it was mentioned with other participants also that there are to observe moral conduct. So, for example, not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, not to use intoxicants, things like that. And we try not to do them anyway, but when you actually take the vow, it's said that it kind of makes the karma more effective, that it's purifying better. So that kind of ideas in the daily practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much once more. Now we have last panel sharing his practical experience with the fast. Gopal, please.
I'm very happy to be part of this discussion. Thank you very much for sharing about your traditions and experiences. Basically, in Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, we're following time, place, circumstance is very important principle to see when founder, spiritual master who established this Krishna consciousness in the West and all around the world. He came to the West 1965, Srila Prabhupada. He requested his followers to observe fasting every 2 weeks, but he noticed that followers couldn't do that. So he said, okay, you should feast. So he gave them a path of not austerity, but the path of following enjoyment. Means you do the minimum standard so that you can continue balanced. So basically, this is every 2nd week. We have this Ekadashi fast, which is actually tomorrow, happens to be. And it's 24-hour fast, means it's approximately it's from the evening to the next day morning. It's like, yeah, it's 24 hours, means from the sunrise to the sunrise. And minimum standard, you refrain from beans and grains, taking light food like fruits. And the maximum standard which scriptures recommends is staying up all night and praying and doing this in a group as a community, and not eating and not drinking anything. Also, there's a lot of fast in a Hindu calendar, in the Krishna consciousness. It's on appearance day of the Lord Krishna, for example. It's full, also 24-hour fast, and appearance day of incarnation of the Lord, and also appearance day of saints. It's recommended to fast when you go to holy pilgrimage. You fast for 1 day. And this holy month of Kartik, and which I basically was my experience doing that. And as you may notice that because I'm in a monastery, then we are following strictly the rules and regulations, which is not the aim itself. We always remind ourselves that we want to develop the pure love of God. That's the main main purpose, because too much austerity makes heart-hearted. So my service is to take care of new monks when they come. We have like program Weekend Monk here in Helsinki. And when youngsters come, we try to tell them like, don't do too much, just try to balance. So the holy month of Kartik, just to finish, it's in the end of the year. And the people taking vows, which is a very powerful thing, but it should be done with conviction and in a proper balance, and to follow as much as you can, but not trying too much, so that you are developing spiritually, but not just mentally becoming strong and proud. That is very big dangers in a spiritual life. So that's what we try to remind ourselves, whatever we do, why we're doing it, who we are, what is our position, and what is the process ultimately. Okay, this was 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Gopal, thank you very much. Now it seems that we arrived to the last part, the third round, where we sum up with the questions that we have. And I just wanted to direct a question to Gopal. You ended now, so we continue the conversation here. And the fast that you are having, the one you call the stricter one, you know, the internet phenomenon, the Sadhguru, or how it's pronounced. He's very good in English and on YouTube and online. People from all over the world watching his talks. He talks about many other things. And for example, about this fast, as you also described, he says that it's something that a conscious person, Hindu, should find out for himself which day it is. And if that consciousness is not reached, then you rely on the fixed date. Am I right? Was his reference was right? And if this is the case, how it's in your practice? Is it to find that day? Because he says, if we listen our body, we can feel when it does not need any food. So this day should be a fasting day. And what do you think about this?
Yeah, so basically there's 3 paths of elevation of the soul. Means like path of karma, path of enjoyment, you do pious work, one path of renunciation, and the third path is spiritual path. And the spiritual path is what is recommended in scriptures, ultimately, the specific days that you get the most benefit of that. And if you do it like as you please to do it, it's more be like karma. So you just you accumulate piety, means you get more pious, means nice credits, your balance go up, it's become green. And austerity means you decrease your bad karma, bad influences through these parts of renunciation. And you can also do it without any recommendation. You can do that, of course, but you not necessarily will have a proper, when you see from the scripture, you really accept, in some way or another, you accept authority of God, and it's a good thing for us, living beings. So when you follow in that consciousness that actually try to please person who is a supreme, then it really gives you all the 3 benefits: benefit of karma, benefit of renunciation, and benefit on a spiritual plane, means you really develop you as a soul. So this is basically best is to follow recommended path, recommended day. And if you concoct it yourself, you have to have really high consciousness when you do that to understand why you do that. This is really much defines which kind of result you get. Basically that it is. And of course, people fasting all the time, like this phone fast, there's internet fast, there's fat fast, there's vegan fast, meat fast, all kind of fast, fish fast, so many fasts. But what is the aim? You should ask that. This is it more on the material plane? We're just using this process for achieving something material, or are we really wants to develop spiritually? That's a question.
All right, thank you very much. Now I'm looking in the chat, and we have some questions, and we have some questions already answered. But those that I noticed which were not being answered, or specifically to the person who's asking about any difficulties when you are fasting in Finland. And Gopal, you answered, but it came to me. I'll read your answer. You say that winter may be a little bit difficult, but basically if you do it as a community, it's much easier than alone somewhere in the cold forest. Yeah, and we had also a question asking, do you have any titles of books who talk about fasting? And Ani Sharab has posted a title of book. If other panelists have any suggestions, please do post in the chat. And another question we have is, do you have a feast days after fasting periods? And it was partially answered, I think, because but let's ask this once more. Do you have a celebration or the feast at the end of the fast? Who would like to say?
I could, for example, say, because our fast builds towards the New Year's celebration at the spring equinox, then typically the New Year's celebration is quite large. So very often we see that very many people gather to it. Nowruz, yes. So that's the kind of name under which it's known also to our Persian and Afghan friends who are not Baha'is, and to all Baha'is. So yes, Nowruz celebration is a big thing, and usually we start the celebration on the last day of fast, but sometimes also on the next day, and it's a big joy to eat together after the fast month of fasting.
Good to know that. Anyone wants to end on this? Do you end the fasting with a feast, with celebration, or with partying?
I could add that I think most of the people know that end of the Ramadan there's Eid al-Fitr, especially before the COVID. You notice it when young people were having very beautiful clothes and they went to every malls to celebrate with their friends and buying a lot of things, and cafeterias were full. So even the Finnish people notice when the Ramadan is ending. I'm also hoping that some of these restrictions on meeting people would end and we could celebrate more freely. But next week when the Ramadan is ending, we are having the Eid prayer at home.
I see. Thank you. And since I don't see any more questions, I will ask some general questions that I took note of. I was wondering, any practice that is complemented with a fast in your practice. For example, at the time that you are having a fast, it's also required or essential to have something other to complement or prerequisite or requirement, because Suad will agree that where, for example, Muslims have this the Fitr, charitable amount of money that was being, it should be sent out to the needy during the Ramadan before the Eid, before the celebration comes. But I was wondering if anything similar in other practices, like something that is complementary to the fast.
Maybe I can answer. Well, I mentioned the praying, but if I think of the Catholic Church, there is a lot to do with almsgiving, and also they have the tradition of pilgrimage, which is also, similar to some other religions. And I want to go back to this. Do we have some feasts and festivals after fast? Because it's very important to also mention the Christmas, that there is a Nativity Lent before Christmas. And in Finland, we might think of the time of Advent, that people are somehow preparing themselves to celebrate the Christmas. But what happens nowadays, that some people tend to celebrate the Christmas before the Christmas comes. they have eating all the Christmas food, and they have decorated their home like already starting early October. But anyway, the Advent is also some kind of time of Lent.
Yeah,
I wanted to add because it's very, very typical time here to celebrate in Finland.
Yeah, I noticed this. Sometimes when culture is complementing, but sometimes culture is confronting the original religious scripture. I can notice in many sites, and this might be one of the examples. And also, Suad voiced some concerns about culture being pushed forward, but the essence of religion is somewhere. And another question, maybe this is a way to go back to the initials and to the beginnings. And I was not pretty sure if in all these religions represented here, the idea of fast is scripture-based, divine and the prophet-based, revealed or required, or also any practice that comes up with for example, spiritual figures or special reformers, or what's your point on this? If we are talking about fast, is it based on the divine and prophetic revelation or scripture, or then summed up with more people getting into, or introduced by scholars, for example, or leaders of their time? Who want to take? Yeah, please, Antti.
Can I take?
Yeah, sure. Please go on.
Thank you. So all the practices that we practice they're based on the teachings of the Buddha, and the Buddha, he taught sutras and tantras, so they are different in the depth of the wisdom, and one has to first purify by doing some, like, it's called lower practices, but you always start like ABC before you start reading. So the lower practices are without feast, and so this new practice, for example, it is a Kriya Tantra practice where you do not celebrate anything afterwards. But then we have most of our rituals during the retreat, which have, for example, you don't talk during some practices, it's kind of speech fast. So after that, you might have celebration and food, like sacred food, blessed food, and that is quite common in our tradition. And then also you were asking about if there is charity, and one special way of doing charity in the Buddhist tradition is like before we go to long retreat, we do this New Moon fasting practice, and then we release animals that would be killed. So we go to, for example, in a fish shop, and abroad they have a live fish. For example, in Scotland, we could find places that they took a big lorry of those fish that if it's good for the fish to live in the river, then that kind of fish is released in the river. And that is like long life practice, so that kind of tradition.
Thank you very much. Following Ani, I apologize for maybe an absurd question, but did you refer to Buddha as a he or she? Or
we normally say he, but Buddha, like the Sakyamuni Buddha, he appeared as Siddhartha Gautama, prince, and then he got enlightened in this body, which was male body, and that is called Nirmanakaya Buddha. But the mind of the Buddha is beyond he and she.
Thank you very much. And by the way, while your mic is on, my colleagues were asking when we were looking for a Buddhist representative, and we contacted many places. We were lucky to find you out, but in many places we got an answer that we are in a retreat. and colleagues were wondering if it's the what kind of retreat is it? Is it the same time with Ramadan, or because we were trying to find similarities, you know?
Well, I don't know of all the retreats, but retreats in general are not bound to some special time like Ramadan is. And we do follow the moon calendar, so they normally do look for some auspicious day to start the retreat. But other than that, it's not bound to that. No. I was also asking one person to come instead of me because I don't feel I'm not very good in this topic.
You are.
And she has done personally a lot of Nyingma practice, and unfortunately her internet connection on Holy Island down there in Scotland in the Atlantic Sea is very bad, so she could not.
Otherwise, yeah, we might have a very interesting view from the island. Anyways, as far as I noticed, like Hindu, Tibetan Buddhism, and Islam, and are based on lunar calendar. What about Bahai and Christianity? Would you say?
Sure. We're mostly based on the solar calendar, but there are a few feasts which are basically leaning a little bit on the lunar calendar. So it's a bit of a mix of both, but we are observing a 365 days calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So just, yeah.
All right. What about Heidi?
Yes, we are following the solar calendar, but as you know that the date of Easter changes regularly.
Right.
That makes a difference, the Easter time.
All right. And let me very quickly look at the chat. They say, do you have an unforgettable memory about fasting in the past? Does anyone have an unforgettable moment of fast in the past? Please.
I think there's a lot of things not to forget. One thing, it's like when you're fasting, be careful if you go to sauna. Fasting and sauna is not good combination.
I tried. I know. Thank you very much. Gopal, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's kind of related to Swat answer also, because if you approach Hindu person, you ask him, do you know about sauna? I said, yes, I know. Outside the sauna. In India, it's like plus 50, summer, already in the springtime. It's already hot. They're really hot now. So, you know, it's sauna there. So fasting in India, it's really austerity. It's real austerity. That's why they usually go to Himalayas. And in Himalaya, you can find the paths of yogis, and they're really fasting. They're really like, they just in 2 words, this process is like you completely eat, like end of eating and drinking, ultimately. It's quite a different path, which is generally people can do, but I've been in India and we're doing this holy months of Kartik fast, and it's like individual vow, but in the end of that there's like 5-day fast, and first day you fast from eating, drinking and sleeping. Second day you can only take different cow products. In this second day you take it was maybe sound contradiction, but it's cow urine. And then third day you take a cow milk, and then yogurt, and then 5th day you take all the products of the cow together, and in this you finish it. So this was very austere fast, which is not recommended for all the people to follow, but there's some special benefits. And if you need some special purification, so we can find those scriptures, special austerities, what saints was doing, like that. So I had this experience a few times, and in India it's very hot. So, but yeah, don't do it in sauna.
We know now. So now we all remember that the aim of the event was looking for similarities and perceived difference. And I'm very happy to have you all and share this very vital information in this information age, or in the age of epistemic instability. I found many commonalities that I want to just emphasize in the end of this event. For example, as Christina also mentioned, the refreshment and readjustment. I think this also meets with many of the panelists, if not all. This stopping for a moment and reflecting back and also to future, and prioritizing the things that we want to do, the things we want to focus, or the time they want to spend. I think this has been very common, and also a part of it is re-evaluating our personal achievements, both in physical and spiritual aspects. And for example, fasting in a lunar day of 14/15 was very similar in Islam and also in Hinduism, I guess. And also, some of you mentioned overeating problem that human species have. And fast is something that really, if followed in the right way and in the right manner, it really gives some control and also disciplines. Some may ask why we are a grown up, why we need discipline, but human being is, I think, is a creature where the things that we want to control gets, it turns away that controls us, as Heidi mentioned. And thinking about purpose of life at the end, purpose of life, what we want to do and how we want to do, and how we use different tools and approaches and concepts and ideas to try to perfect ourselves. Yeah, this has been things that I take away with me today. And I'm very happy again to see you all. And it definitely, this time is not enough. I mean, this given time was very short. Each panelist could talk for more than hours about the fast and its tradition. But given the circumstances we're living, we have to limit. But we hope for a continuation. We hope for the other platforms where we come together and discuss and continue from where we left. And I wish you all a perfect and wonderful week ahead and a weekend. And I really want to show my gratitude to all participants that joined in this time of the day. From I saw from at least I saw one person from India, so it was international event, you could say. And if you have any wish, please, floor is yours.
I have to continue my work today. We are in the busiest recruitment time having at the school, so I'm having some job interviews this evening still before iftar.
I feel you. I feel you.
So I want to thank you all, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you very much. With the same.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
Ramadan Mubarak to all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And when video is ready, you will find them on our social media.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks also to for participants, and for those who missed this event, the link would be available later on. And the small presents has been sent to your address. Hopefully you receive by today or sooner. what was made by our colleagues, and it was not my event. The Sky Hall team came together to realize this event. So I also thank my colleagues who contributed, who are staying behind this whole event. Once more, thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Your efforts.
Thank you very much.
Moikka. Say.